On the 16th of August, 2025, at 4 a.m., the world was shocked by a large-scale arms seizure in Burkina Faso. In a special operation led directly by President Ibrahim Traoré, government forces intercepted 57 trucks. These trucks were loaded with military weapons and ammunition. The discovery left everyone asking, who was the intended recipient for these weapons? And who was the mastermind behind it all? The bust occurred in the Canary region, near the border with Togo. Something unusual was spotted by border guards during a routine patrol, a long convoy moving slowly along the border late at night, at an hour when the area is typically silent. Immediate red flags were raised by the convoy's size and its strange timing. Senior officials were quickly alerted by the border commander, Captain Musa Kabor. Initial intelligence had suggested the trucks were carrying humanitarian aid, but something felt wrong. Who makes aid deliveries at midnight? And why use back roads instead of the main route? President Traoré did not hesitate. He realized the danger and issued a clear but cautious order to Special Forces Commander General Ibrahim Zerbo. Intercept that convoy. But be careful. This could be more than just smuggling. Swiftly, the Special Forces moved. A covert ambush was set up along the convoy's route, with drones and helicopters tracking the trucks from above. The operation began at 4 a.m. The road was blocked just as the convoy arrived. The drivers, taken by surprise, tried to escape but were captured within minutes. When the first truck was opened, the team was stunned. Disguised beneath sacks as aid supplies were AK-47s, M16s, rocket launchers, grenades, everything you would expect in a full military arsenal. Every single truck was the same. A call was immediately placed to the president by Captain Kabor. Mr. President, you won't believe this. These trucks are packed with enough weapons to equip an entire army. President Traoré replied, secure everything. Do not lose a single bullet and make those drivers talk. We must know who is behind this. Someone is preparing for war in Burkina Faso. The sheer amount of firepower and the scale of the operation prove this is no small-time smuggling ring. The question now is who is planning what and why. As the investigation unfolded, the captured driver, Mark Antoine Zongo, was the first to break. Shaking with fear, he finally spoke. They told us we were hauling agricultural machine parts. We were to drop them off at a warehouse in Togo, and from there they would be shipped overseas. But the story unraveled as investigators dug deeper. What came to light was staggering. While most drivers truly had no idea what they were transporting, the organizers knew exactly what they were doing. A deliberate move to avoid suspicion. Each truck had been dispatched from a different location at different times using different routes, only joining up just before crossing the border. By the second day, even more disturbing details were uncovered by Burkina Faso's intelligence team. Partial serial numbers on the weapons were recovered, even though many had been filed off. Using advanced forensic technology, the weapons were traced to surprising sources. Some were leftovers from the Libyan civil war, others had been used in Yemen, and some were brand new, straight from the factory, never fired once. The total value of the haul, over $700 million. This raised the most pressing question. Who had the kind of money to fund this, and what were they planning? An emergency meeting of the National Security Council was immediately called by President Ibrahim Traoré. Laid out on the table was the full inventory of the seized arsenal. 25,000 AK-47s, 10,000 minutes and 16 seconds, 13 million rounds of ammunition, 70,000 hand grenades, 2,500 rocket launchers, 400 anti-aircraft missiles, 50 tons of explosives. Defense Minister General Sadu was stunned. This isn't just a shipment, he said. With this firepower, you could invade an entire country. Grimly, Interior Minister Hussein Karour added, if these weapons had reached the wrong hands, Burkina Faso would be in chaos right now. Terror groups could have launched a long-term insurgency. Worse, this could have fueled a full-blown coup. President Traoré stood and addressed the room. This is not random. This is part of a much bigger plan to destabilize our country, just like Libya, Syria, and Yemen. But we are not asleep. We have just stopped something huge. Then another bombshell was delivered by Intelligence Head Commander Ouedraogo. Mr. President, one of the drivers just gave us a name. The weapons were headed to secret warehouses in Ouagadougou. That's where they were going to be distributed. Without hesitation, President Traoré ordered, Launch a full-scale operation in Ouagadougou. Search every suspicious warehouse. Find out who is waiting for these weapons. And most importantly, trace the money. Follow the finances. That's where the truth will come out. This was no ordinary smuggling case. It was an attempt to ignite a war from the shadows, and Traore might have stopped it just in time. The next day at dawn, Operation Storm began in the capital. Simultaneous raids were conducted at 23 different addresses. Weapons were discovered in 17 warehouses. Among those arrested were familiar names, former ministers, retired generals, wealthy businessmen, and even foreign diplomats. Their common trait was open opposition to the Traore administration. By the fourth day, the investigation took a shocking turn. Under pressure, one of the arrested suspects, a prominent businessman named Francois Bongo, cracked. His confession hit like a thunderclap. Barely able to speak, he admitted, this wasn't just about weapons. The plan was set in motion months ago. Foreign powers promised us their support. The goal was clear: overthrow President Traoré and install a pro-Western puppet government. President Traoré leaned forward and asked the million-dollar question: which foreign powers? Bongo hesitated. Then, trembling, he revealed, the planning meetings were held in Accra. Some delegates came from Abidjan. The instructions came from Paris, and we got the green light from Washington. The room fell into stunned silence. No one moved. Go on, President Traoré said, and Bongo laid it all out. The plan was chilling: stage terrorist attacks to create mass panic, use the chaos to mobilize opposition groups, then, with the help of traitors inside the army, launch a military coup. Even worse, this was no amateur plot. The operation had a name: Operation Restored Democracy. Its budget was $700 million, and the 57 trucks of weapons were only phase one. Under pressure, Franois Bongo dropped more names, and some were jaw-dropping. Allegedly involved were diplomats from Western embassies, executives at multinational corporations, and even officials from international NGOs. President Ibrahim Traoré knew the world needed to see the truth with their own eyes. He called a nationally televised press conference, one that would go down in history. Behind him stood a towering display of the confiscated weapons. Viewers at home were stunned by the sheer scale of the arsenal. He began, "My fellow Burkinabe," and to the international community. 3 days ago, we intercepted the largest weapons smuggling operation in our nation's history. But this was more than smuggling. It was part of a coordinated plan to destroy our country from within. Holding up a stack of classified documents, he continued, "Here is the proof. 57 trucks, $700 million worth of military hardware. The goal: to plunge Burkina Faso into chaos, to pit our people against each other, and to install a government that answers to foreign powers, not to our citizens." Traoré's voice grew firmer. "Where did the weapons come from? I cannot reveal all the details yet, but know this. The imperialist powers still believe they can control Africa. They are mistaken. We are not asleep any longer. We are awake and alert." Journalists erupted with questions. CNN asked which countries were behind this. Traore responded that the investigation is ongoing, but confirmed some weapons were manufactured in NATO countries. The BBC demanded to know the masterminds. Traore stated that 17 individuals had been arrested so far, including former ministers and generals, adding that informants are talking and the full truth will soon be revealed. Al Jazeera inquired about the impact on regional security. Traore declared this was not merely an attack on Burkina Faso, but an assault on all of Africa, with similar plots unfolding in Mali, Niger, and Guinea. He called for unity. The Russian press asked if security would be tightened. Traore answered absolutely, confirming the army is on high alert, borders are locked down, and, most importantly, the people are with them. To close the press conference, Traore played a video clip of Francois Bongo's full confession. On screen, the businessman appeared with tears streaming down his face. "They lied to us," he said. "They told us we were bringing democracy, but all we would have done was destroy our own country. President Traoré was right. We betrayed our people. I was wrong. I am sorry." The room fell into silence. Then President Traoré concluded with a powerful statement. "That is the real face of this plot. People willing to sell out their nation for money and power. But they failed. And they will continue to fail because Burkina Faso stands united." By the investigation's fifth day, events took an even darker turn. Authorities combed through data from seized laptops and phones, uncovering something chilling. This was not just a plot against Burkina Faso. The entire Sahel region was in the crosshairs. Separate plans had been drawn up for multiple countries, according to the documents. The goal was to remove President Traoré in Burkina Faso, President Aim Goïta in Mali, and General Abdul Rahman Chani in Nigeria, to install pro-Western leaders serving foreign interests in every case. The documents also revealed the conspiracy's staggering financial scope. $1 billion had been allocated to execute the plan. Investigators followed the money trail, which pointed to networks in the Gulf and deep into Europe. It was clear this conspiracy was global, not local. President Traoré called a second press conference. This time, his tone was fierce and his message unfiltered. The masks are off. Those who wish to recolonize Africa should listen carefully. We are the grandchildren of Thomas Sankara, and we will not kneel to anyone. He held up a new set of documents, a revelation that stunned the room. They had already drawn up the names of a new government, a full list of ministers, departments, even their first policy actions. This wasn't just planning, they were ready to seize power. Look at the arrogance, he said. Then he delivered his final words. They divided up our ministries before even toppling our government. But they forgot one thing. The people of Burkina Faso own this land, not them. Among the newly detained were several foreign nationals, 3 French citizens, 2 British, 1 American, and 2 Israelis. All carried diplomatic passports, yet none were actual diplomats. Their arrests ignited a global diplomatic firestorm. Western governments immediately demanded their release, but President Traoré stood firm. Having a diplomatic passport does not give you permission to commit crimes on our soil. On day 6, the accused were brought to court to face grave charges, attempting to overthrow the state, organizing a terrorist group, weapons trafficking, and treason. The packed courtroom was filled with citizens demanding justice. The suspects looked broken. Some cried, others begged for forgiveness, but it was too late. The prosecutor's case was airtight, filled with audio recordings, surveillance footage, bank transactions, and full confessions. Even the defense attorney struggled to find a response. Meanwhile, international pressure on Burkina Faso mounted. Some Western nations threatened economic sanctions if the foreign detainees were not released. But President Traoré did not flinch. History will judge those who try to intimidate us. While Western nations pressed, others stepped forward in support. Russia declared that Traoré has the right to defend his country. China went further, offering to donate security equipment and stating, "We stand with them in the fight against terrorism." Turkey added, "Africa's security is our security. Arms smuggling is a crime against humanity." Iran condemned the plot. Imperialist powers must leave Africa alone. Democracy cannot be delivered at gunpoint. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro praised Trudeau directly. Brother Traoré is today's Simon Bolivar, a hero of the anti-imperialist struggle. On the 17th of August, President Traoré appeared before thousands of gathered people. His speech was historic. "Dear people," he began, "a week ago, we prevented a major conspiracy against our nation. We seized 57 trucks of weapons, but more importantly, we disrupted their game. We caught those who wanted to turn us against each other." The crowd erupted in applause. "This victory," he declared, "is not only ours. It is Africa's victory. Now, no one can play games with weapons in Africa. Now, no one can try to make us puppets." Young people kept tempo, chanting "Tro, Tro." Women shouted victory cries. This is the real victory. When his speech ended, the square roared with joy as people embraced, kissed, and celebrated. Burkina Faso had been saved from a great disaster. By the 18th of August, the future of the confiscated weapons was clear. As President Traoré promised, some would be melted down and sold as scrap, with the proceeds invested in education. Others would be handed over to modernize Burkina Faso's military. The rest would be destroyed permanently. But this was not just about disarming a threat. This moment became a powerful symbol of Africa's awakening. Traoré had not only seized illegal weapons, he had reclaimed the dignity of a continent. His bold stand sent a clear message to the world. Africa will write its own future. Now, as the shockwaves of the operation spread across the region, a new era was being born. The old tactics of intimidation, violence, bribery, and foreign interference were beginning to lose their grip. That same evening, President Traore made another surprise move, calling for a large public gathering in Independence Square where some confiscated weapons would be displayed. Tens of thousands of people turned up. Many were in disbelief at the towering piles of rifles, rockets, and grenades. An elderly man wept as he stared at the weapons. They were going to kill our grandchildren with these. A young woman cried out, "If it wasn't for Traore, we'd already be in a civil war." Then President Traoré stepped up to the microphone, calm but commanding. "This was the future our enemies had planned for us," President Traoré declared, "but we stayed alert. We stayed united and we won." Then he made a bold promise that brought the crowd to its feet. "With the money we earned from melting these weapons, we will build 100 new schools, 50 health clinics, and 1,000 kilometers of irrigation canals. Tools of death will become projects of life."